You are now entering the spoiler zone. The following podcast contains explicit plot details and pockets of profanity. You have been warned.
The Exton Moss Experiment. Adventures in Wine and Space with Simon Exton and Ken Moss. Hello boys and girls, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Exton Moss Experiment. I'm Ken Moss.
Hello, I'm Simon Exton.
And this time
We're watching with joy.
We are watching with joy, and
joy and excitement and all the wonderful things, because we are watching
Ace of Wands, Peacock Pie.
Woohoo!
Check white dove, snow black slate. Time is face. From the edge of mystery.
Taro meets Mr. Peacock, a man with the power of suggestion. In Peacock's hands, torn strips of newspaper become banknotes. People book holidays to places they don't want to visit, and Taro's stage act becomes a shambles. This is the 8th episode of Series 3 and was first aired on the 6th of September 1972. Peacock Pie you have always spoken in very high terms about.
Peacock Pie is generally regarded as about the best of the surviving Ace of Wands stories. I love this. I absolutely love this. I really like all the surviving episodes of Ace of Wands. Do I think it's the best? I think it's one of the best, but Ace of Wands is one of those things where I will enjoy every story when I see them, and the one that I think is best is generally the one that I want to watch at the time, and sometimes that will be Peacock Pie, sometimes that will be Sisters Deadly, which we will come on to in the next episode. Sometimes it'll be The Medalist, sometimes it'll even be The Power of Atep. Some of them are a bit odd. We've just come off the back of watching Mama Doc, and you said to me that you wanted something crap in the same way that you could take the piss out of the Tomorrow People, and Ace of Wands doesn't really have that. Every surviving story is pretty good. We did Mama Doc because it's possibly the oddest.
But it was still quite sad. It was not in any way... It was bizarre, but it wasn't shit. And
it is such a terrible, terrible shame that none of the first 2 seasons exist, because they look, from everything you can see and the audios that survive and the pictures that survive, it just looks wonderful in a sort of dying embers of 60s trippy stuff, diluted down for kiddywinks and beautiful hippie trippy gorgeousness with Judy Lowe, who is a superb actress.
that theme tune is stuck in my head, but I think I need a gin stuck in my throat. Shall we wave the tonic screwdriver?
Yes, hopefully not for something that's going to get stuck in your throat.
This time we are drinking the Queen of Elfam gin. It's another one from the Northumberland Spirit Company Limited, and the infobolic says the Fairy Queen appears in many Borderland tales and witch trials. She was known to kidnap men for her own delights, only to release them later with gifts of healing and prophecy. It doesn't sound like much of a punishment.
Frankly, that depends on your perspective.
Oh yes, different side of the table, old
Yes.
boy.
Different kind of queen.
It's 40.1%. First things first, a little sniff at.
Oh, now. Dust.
Yes, but interesting.
But a dusty smell really promises a kind of dry flavour. And I love dry flavours. I'm a big fan of sumac and things like that.
Speedo's on, dive in.
Oh, what an interesting flavour. It's got a tingle on it. I mean, it's very definitely a gin. There's a juniper tang to it.
Dust. It's a dusty gin.
Yes, but that makes it sound terrible, and this isn't. This is lovely.
I do like it whenever we get a gin that I can't get a handle on or describe, because it's always fascinating. I can't begin to describe that, but I like it.
It is dusty.
It is dusty gin.
But very, very nice dusty. I mean, this is gorgeous. This is a really easy sipping. You could pick this out of a lineup at 300 miles. It is unique. It is gorgeous. It is wonderfully blended. This is one of the most interesting gins we've had for quite a while.
I suspect you're going to give it a 5. It's a 4 from me, but it's a very good, solid 4. What an interesting gin.
Yes, does it taste of Queen?
I've had less experience, old boy.
It's not what I've heard.
We'll grab your delicious glass and we will descend into the under gallery at Podcasting House to open up one of the doors. Where are we going?
Going away from Spaff because he's eyeing my gin. He's not having it. We'll not disturb him in the Imaginarium. Let's go to the Black Archive.
What are you rescuing?
Rest of Ace of Wands.
Oh, you have always said that. I believe there's some, and I have heard them actually, there's some very low quality audio copies of a few episodes from the first series. But just to give a bit of background, I'm sure we talked about this last time, but the first two series have a slightly different feel, don't they?
There's a different cast. So in the third series, the lead character, Taro, is joined by brother and sister Chaz and Mickey. He's a kind of entrepreneur / figure of fun. She's partially telepathic and takes on a role as his stage assistant. There are also a couple of appearances from Mr. Sweet, who is an antiquarian bookseller, who was a regular character in the first couple of series and is kind of relegated to side character. Well, actually, the stories that he appears in, he's quite pivotal. So we saw him in Mama Doc, and he had quite a significant role in that, but he doesn't appear in many of the stories. For the first 2 years, the assistant roles were Lully, who was his stage partner, and Sam, who was basically their roadie, and Mr. Sweet and Ozymandias the Owl.
My name is Ozymandias. Look on my wings, ye mighty. I'm going to go for something, it's not related, but it is a kids' series, and it's actually one that I didn't like very much, but it is missing. It's Why Don't You? The full title of it was Why Don't You Just Switch Off Your Television Set and Go and Do Something Less Boring Instead? The irony being, it was very boring. However, it was one of those magazine type things from the 80s that I grew up with, and Russell T Davies cut his teeth on. I believe it's his only appearance in front of the camera. How do I describe this thing? It was a load of activities to get kiddies doing activities rather than just sitting watching the TV. But you had to watch the TV in order to do the activities. It was an odd programme. But there are 59 episodes missing. They were very much of their time.
Out of how many?
Don't know.
Okay.
But it ran between 1978 and 1986.
And I remember it being a school holiday morning thing.
It was. It tended to be on during the holidays, and I never really watched it because I found it so dull.
There was that, and there were things like Skippy and Champion the Wonder Horse and White Horses. My God, White Horses was dull. It had a really good theme tune, which has been covered reasonably recently by Mary Wilson, she of the Wilsations fame. Do you know who Mary Wilson is?
Is it Mary as in M-A-R-I?
Yeah.
Yeah. She actually sang the theme version of Coupling.
Yes. Well known in the 80s, Massive Blonde Beehive. Actually really, really, really good live. I saw her live at Blackpool Tower.
She's got a lovely voice.
She did now, probably a good few years ago now, called Pop Deluxe, where she covered a whole load of pop songs and slightly unusual things, and one of them was the White Horses theme tune. The White Horses theme tune was the only good thing about White Horses. It was this low-budget French thing about kids who hung around with white horses and they dug up truffles or something shit like that.
We got a lot of imported stuff in the 80s, though.
But the theme tune is wonderful, and she does a superb version of it that we could possibly drop a little snippet of in here, couldn't you?
On white horses, let me ride away to my world of dreams so far away. Let me run to the sun, to a world my heart can understand. It's a gentle, warm and wonderland far away. Stars away, where the clouds are made of candy floss as the day is born. When the stars are gone, we'll race to meet the dawn.
The other thing, which I loved, and actually still quite love from a very kitsch camp perspective, is the old 1930s Flash Gordon.
Oh my God.
Serials.
They were on during the school holidays,
yes. And wildly entertaining. And it was the Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and King of the Rocket Men, and they were all really entertaining.
They were so bad even at the time.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely terrible.
Because I remember things like Superman with George Reeve and the Whirlybirds and all stuff like that was repeated. It was all terrible. I probably really enjoy it now, actually.
Flipper.
Again, Flipper, Gentle Ben, Lassie, all those animal ones. I thought they were shit then. Skippy did stop repeating.
Champion the Wonder Horse.
Oh, God.
Champion the Wonder Horse was dreadful. But again, had quite a good theme tune.
And Black Beauty, Follyfoot. Now, Follyfoot, I remember having...
Shite.
I know, but I remember having... I can hear the theme tune in my head. The Lightning Tree.
Down in the meadow where the windows speak, in the middle of a field stands the lightning tree. Its limbs all torn from the day it was born, for the tree was born in a thunderstorm. Grow, grow, the lightning tree, it's never too late for you and me.
Theme tune to Black Beauty, absolutely. And if you hear that, it's an utter earworm.
Then we won't be playing it here, will we?
I have it in my head. If I have it in my head, other people should have it in their heads.
Having rambled on a touch, here we are back in the viewing room. And it's time to run VT
How
on...
did Spaff get up here so
Oh,
quickly?
what is that? What have you brought with you, Spaff?
That is no concern of yours.
Rose creams. Where the hell have you... Have you been feeding him again?
Absolutely not. I did have some rose creams in my bag that we were going to have later
Come on, hand them over,
during
Spaff.
our regular rewatch of Power of the Daleks.
Spaff, hand them over.
We are not yet ready to make our own.
How rude. Right?
He's just fucked off through the wall.
God
with my rose
almighty.
creams.
Why do we keep the thing around?
He's quite useful for digging tunnels.
Well, we are knocking through. But in the meantime, it's time for part 1 of Peacock Pie. How many episodes is this?
3.
Then run VT.
Yes?
Well, about the rent, Mr. Peacock.
Oh, but I paid you, Mrs. McFadden. A whole 2 months in arrears.
Yes, I know, but
In crisp new banknotes. 40 of them.
it wasn't real money, was it? It was one of your tricks.
Tricks?
Oh, it looked like real money to me. But when I got to the shop...
They said it wasn't.
Yes, and they were right. Look, plain writing paper.
Yes, that's the problem. The trick doesn't work third hand.
What?
Well, if it did, there'd be no stopping me. Oh, I won't trick your mind anymore, Mrs. McFadden. I've been working on some people. Well, on something for 3 days. You'll have your money tomorrow. I promise.
Okay, so we've just watched all 3 episodes of Peacock Pie.
And wasn't it marvellous?
It was lovely. The first thing I'm going to say is, as with last time when we watched Mamadoc, it's another one with a lonely old person. Because the antagonist, even calling him that's a little unfair, Henry Peacock is this middle-aged man, very lonely, lives on his own in a rented room. He's got his old landlady who adores him even though he plays mental tricks on her. And he's basically reaching out to the world to find somebody that's got the same sort of mental powers as he has, which basically involve getting people to think and see things very differently. So, for example, it opens up with cash deposits to a bank, and he mentally tricks these 3 security deposit guards into thinking that the day after they drive their van to an abandoned house somewhere and they still think that they're dropping off cash deposits at the bank. And he helps himself to £40,000. But there's no wicked intent there. He's just trying to catch the attention of someone who will basically either entertain him or be on the same level as him. And the Tarot gang aren't actually all that sympathetic to the poor old bastard.
Ultimately, yes. They start off wanting nothing to do with him. And then Chaz goes and fucks it up by going in and trying to interview him. And what he wants is the attention of Taro and Mickey, because he knows that they have a degree of psychic power, but not as strong as his. And he wants the company of people with similar abilities to him, ignoring the fact that he actually has 0 in common with these people. And they spend an hour together and they will be recognising how chalk and cheese they are and bored senseless. But he doesn't realise that. All he sees is, I've been the only one who's been able to do this my entire life, and suddenly I've got people who understand my weirdness and I want to spend time with them. And he doesn't really know how to just reach out and say, can we sit down and talk about this? He has to force the issue, which is where the problem is, because if he turned up and said, look, I know you can do similar things to me, but can we just chat and I'll help you get a bit more competent at what you're doing and you can talk to me about what's going on? Because Taro has obviously come into contact with people like this before. Mr. Peacock equally obviously hasn't, and has been lonely his whole life because nobody else can understand this thing that he does. And there is a bit where he says that he doesn't want to get angry with them because he knows what the consequences of him getting angry is. So he's had experiences when he was younger of his power running out of control.
Yes, it comes across. I mean, we never see any flashes of that. It is a very stern face. It's Brian Wilde plays Henry Peacock, and it's very much against his usual bumbling type.
But he didn't have that bumbling type in the early 70s. That came on with Porridge and Last the Summer Wine and his later career.
Yes, and we've seen him previously in It's Dark Outside, and he played even in that, though, he was this rather staid middle-aged man even in that.
Yes, but he wasn't bumbling at all.
No, that's true. But this time, there's a menacing edge to him that I've never seen him in anything else
I think his
before.
portrayal is fantastic. He carries this story on his own. He has a landlady who's there for sort of proof of power because he'll change her appearance from an elderly lady to a young girl in a flouncy 1930s style frock, in the same way as he changes his terrace boarding house into this great mansion when they walk into it. The way that they defeat him is not by seeing through his illusions, but by making them think that they're seeing through his illusions. So Chaz has been in there and seen the place and what it's like when Mr. Peacock's not there. So he can say there's soot in the fireplace and there's bars on the windows and there's an old stuffed fish in the corner. And Taro is then able to use that to say, well, actually, you're not all that great and I can see that stuffed fish in the corner. It's a sooty old fireplace and you're not all that.
It just seemed a rather unkind resolution. Because the whole way through, we just don't want anything to do with this guy. With no interest whatsoever. It could have all been resolved. Would have been robbed of 2 episodes, of course, but it could have all been resolved quite simply by just chatting to the man. Which they don't, and instead they just resist at every turn, this man trying to get their attention. And Taro knows full well why he's trying to get their attention.
On the other hand, that was Taro's plan in the first place, and it's Chaz that mucked it all up, because if he hadn't gone to the house, Peacock would have had to have come to Taro and Mickey and sort of had to come and ask, rather than being the one that's in control because they've come to him. So I think if Chaz hadn't decided he knew better than anybody else...
I've only seen 2 stories, and he's done that in both of them. Does he have form for this?
There are some characters that are there to resolve plot, and there are some characters that are there to create plot. See also Susan.
I'm still getting my head around the fact that Roy Holder, who plays Chaz, 11 years later was this haggard middle-aged man in Caves of Androzani. What in the name of hell happened?
Capstan full strength, probably.
And a lot of alcohol. Yeah. In itself, I really enjoyed this. It was, as with the last one, Mamadoc, it stinks of the early 70s.
I mean, yes, Taro's outfits are a touch form-fitting.
Yeah, you did notice this, and he's a big lad, Taro. Those trousers don't leave an awful lot to the imagination at the front. But I can just imagine coming home from school and there being some variety of potatoes and mince cooking in the kitchen, and this being on. So it catapults me back a bit. The one thing I did notice, it's the oddest thing to notice, was the red fire alarm with the circular glass panel in it. That took me back, because the last time I saw those was at school. It's wonderfully nostalgic watching this stuff, even though it was before I was born. Do I prefer this one to Mamadoc? Yes, I do. And I think a lot of that is to do with Brian Wilde, because he was a joy to watch. Like you say, he does carry this. Yeah. And to the point where actually Taro and the others are very much secondary characters in this story.
Did it need a full 3 episodes?
No.
Could they have told this story in 2 episodes? I think they could.
Did it drag, though?
It was just a very nice, meandering story. Now, if you watched it an episode at a time, I think it might drag a bit. This is one that repays just blitzing through all 3.
I can't imagine being tremendously... having said that, viewing habits have changed, but I can't envisage being completely gripped by this if they were 3 weeks apart. But then again, I used to watch stuff like that when I was a kid, and I was, so...
Yeah, and at the time, you were used to the fact that the next episode would be in a week's time. That's what it is. There's no being able to blitz it on download. There wasn't even a record 3 episodes and watch them all back to back because there wasn't a facility to record stuff. You watch the episode when it's on and you watch the next episode when it's on again. I think we're very lucky to have this final season of Ace of Wands because I think if it didn't exist, the description of it wouldn't be that exciting.
No, and I mean, we found this with other stuff, notably Doctor Who, of course, because that isn't the one we've focused on through the years where missing episodes are concerned. But when stuff turns up, on paper it didn't sound particularly exciting, and sometimes the soundtracks of these things, if they exist, aren't particularly exciting until you actually see them on screen. I'll come back to it yet again, Appointment with Fear, the 1940s radio stuff that we've done recently for the other podcast, Archive of Audio Antiquities. On paper, it sounds very dull, and you would think, early 1940s radio, how good's it going to be? But it isn't. It's gripping. We've been talking earlier today about another series, Counter-Strike, which we have done with, there's a recording lurking about in the archives that I've never edited, and I remember being bored to tears by it at the time, but I think it's probably one of those things that might be worth a revisit and a reevaluation.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I thought you were unfair on it at the time, because it was... Then we started watching it about 1 o'clock in the morning.
I don't think it was quite that bad. We were certainly late when we finished it. But that I do remember being particularly bored by, and it didn't strike me on paper either.
The thing about Counter-Strike, we are segueing a little.
Meandering touch.
It's quite a dull first episode, but the other 3 surviving episodes are pretty good.
I mean, with that in mind...
I mean, one of them's a remake of a Prisoner episode, so...
Oh, you know more about that than I do.
What, you mean I've seen The Prisoner?
Yes, I've seen a handful, and you've seen the whole 17.
And the remake.
Oh, which you did eulogise about, yes.
I'm not sure I eulogised about it. I don't hate it in the way that Prisoner fans hate it.
The way you came across it was actually better than the original.
On some levels it is. The Prisoner is very important historically, but I don't think it's that brilliant a piece of television. There are certainly a fair number of moments of brilliance in it, but a lot of it's very self-indulgent, and Patrick McGowan really can't act. Anyway, back to Ace of Wands.
But what we were talking about...
And the people who very definitely could act.
Yeah, they were good. Having looked up on the Oracle, Petra Markham, who plays Mickey, she is still with us. At the time of recording, she's 79. And it does take sometimes a little bit of a leap of reality to recognise that this stuff is over 50 years old. There might be young actors and actresses that are in these things, but... It's 50-odd years ago that we're watching these things. And sometimes it's a little bit of a slap in the face of reality that they're not that age anymore or even comparable.
And she was a Doctor Who alumnus, wasn't she? She was Crusade.
She was in the Crusade. She was in... she was one of the handmaidens.
Was she not one of the daughters?
Yeah. I can't remember her name. Saf something. Anyway, they're all called Saffadin, Saladin. Anyway. One I didn't look up was actually Taro himself. Is he still with us?
Yeah, appeared in something called Dog Squad last year. Oh, he was in Vigil. I hadn't realised that.
Oh, is that Saran Jones, that
yes.
one?
Have you seen it?
No, I know it was a big thing a couple of years ago.
Regular role on Taggart between 87 and 2008 as Dr. Magnus Baird, who was one of the pathologists. It's a lot of Scottish stuff, so Ramsay Nesbitt and that kind of thing. I was in Edge of Darkness, which you've not seen, I think.
That was Bob Peck, wasn't it, in that one?
Was in The Omega Factor, was in Blake 7, an episode of each. Taro was quite early on in his career, so it was 70 to 72. It was his first regular role in anything, and his first IMDb credit was only from 1969.
How old is he?
Born 1943, so he'd be 81.
Again, it's a lot longer ago than you think. On the whole, though, I do enjoy these Ace of Wands.
There isn't a bad surviving story.
Because coming up, we have, next time we're with Cy Hart. We're going to be watching...
Sisters Deadly.
You said with a smile.
It's an entertaining little story.
Oh, God. The one thing I must give absolute credit to, yet again, the theme song. Oh, my God, it doesn't half get in your head.
That's a proper earworm.
That is a bad one. Again, stinks of the 70s, and the title sequence stinks of the 70s. But no, I'm looking forward to this. It's one of those that I'm glad we're doing a trilogy on. Because when Si joins us next time, that kicks off a little mini-season of collaborations. Because there are episodes in the can that have been sat in the can, some of them for a little while. Some of them are freshly recorded, but some of them really should have been released a long time ago. So, yes.
And we've got an interesting bunch of people that we've recorded with. So there's Alex Wilcock for one, Adam from RetroTube, there's one with the Antique Dust Boys.
We've recorded with Paul Asrush, a couple of things with him. Joe Ford, we've done a few things with him, and there'll be a couple of crossover episodes where we've guested on his podcast, Hamster with a Blunt Penknife. So a lot of variety coming up over the next few episodes, which we hope you'll enjoy. But for the time being, we'll sign off, and until next time, when it'll be another Ace of Wands episode, thank you for listening.
Yes, goodbye, and we can heartily recommend Ace of Wands. Entertaining, early 70s, quite trippy fun. See you next time.
Ta-ta.
The Exton Moss experiment featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was performed by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.